Preparing for a Deloitte Analyst, Business Analyst interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 20 key questions you're likely to face. For each question you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. How would you describe the role of an analyst or business analyst at Deloitte? I would describe Deloitte's analyst role as translating business needs into structured analysis and practical recommendations. The work may involve gathering requirements, cleaning data, building Excel or Power BI outputs, and communicating findings to clients and senior teams. As a fresher, I would emphasize curiosity, accuracy, teamwork, and willingness to learn. I would also connect the role to measurable impact, such as reducing process time, improving controls, or supporting better decisions. While answering, focus on translating business needs into analysis, gathering requirements, working with data, supporting client decisions, communicating clearly, and demonstrating accuracy, curiosity, teamwork, and a practical, outcome-oriented mindset. Question 2. Why do you want to join Deloitte? I want to join Deloitte because it combines strong professional standards with exposure to complex client problems. The firm's multidisciplinary environment would let me learn from finance, technology, risk, and consulting professionals. I am particularly attracted to the analyst role because it matches my strengths in structured thinking, Excel, communication, and problem solving. I also value Deloitte's emphasis on ethics and continuous development, which would help me build a durable foundation as a fresher. Make sure to cover Deloitte's reputation, client exposure, learning environment, multidisciplinary work, professional development, ethical culture, and why the specific analyst role matches your skills and long-term career goals. Question 3. Tell me about yourself. I am a recent graduate with a strong interest in business analysis and data-driven decision-making. During college, I developed Excel skills and completed projects involving financial analysis, data cleaning, and presentation of recommendations. I enjoy breaking ambiguous problems into manageable steps and explaining findings clearly. My academic background has built discipline, while team projects improved my communication. I am now seeking a role where I can apply these skills, learn quickly, and contribute to Deloitte's client-focused work. In your answer, present a concise education to role story, highlight relevant projects or internships, quantify achievements where possible, mention analytical and communication strengths, and finish by explaining why Deloitte is the logical next step. Question 4. Why should we hire you as a fresher? You should hire me because I bring a strong learning mindset, structured problem solving, and dependable execution. I may be a fresher, but I have practiced analyzing information, checking details, and presenting conclusions through academic projects and team assignments. I accept feedback positively and take ownership of completing work accurately. I also understand that client work requires professionalism and collaboration. With guidance, I can learn Deloitte's tools and processes quickly while contributing disciplined effort from the beginning. Be sure to mention transferable strengths rather than claiming extensive experience: analytical ability, learning agility, ownership, attention to detail, communication, resilience, and examples that demonstrate reliable execution. Question 5. Describe a time when you worked in a team. In a university project, our team analyzed a retailer's declining profitability. I was responsible for organizing the data and preparing the cost analysis. Team members initially used different assumptions, creating inconsistent results. I suggested a shared calculation template, documented definitions, and arranged a short review meeting. This aligned our work and helped us deliver the presentation on time. The experience taught me that clear ownership, common assumptions, and early communication are essential for effective teamwork. Focus on the situation, your specific responsibility, how the team coordinated, a disagreement or challenge, actions you took, and the measurable or observable result using a clear star structure. Question 6. Tell me about a time you faced a difficult deadline. During a group assignment, we had 3 days to analyze a large dataset and present recommendations. I divided the work into data preparation, analysis, validation, and presentation, then prioritized the items affecting other team members. I completed the core calculations first and communicated a potential delay immediately when the source file contained errors. We adjusted responsibilities and finished on schedule. The experience showed me that prioritization and transparent communication protect quality when deadlines are tight. In your answer, explain how you prioritized tasks, assessed dependencies, communicated risks, maintained quality, and delivered the outcome without presenting last-minute work or poor planning as a strength. Question 7. How would you handle an ambiguous business problem? I would begin by clarifying the decision the client needs to make and how success will be measured. Then I would identify stakeholders, define the scope, and separate known facts from assumptions. I would form a few testable hypotheses, gather relevant data, and analyze the highest impact drivers first. Throughout the process, I would validate interpretations with stakeholders. Finally, I would present practical recommendations, clearly distinguishing evidence, judgment, risks, and unresolved questions. Make sure to cover clarifying the objective, identifying stakeholders, defining scope, forming hypotheses, gathering relevant evidence, testing assumptions, and communicating limitations before recommending action. Question 8. What steps would you take if a client gave you incomplete requirements? I would not immediately start building based on guesses. First, I would ask targeted questions about the objective, users, required fields, timing, and decision the output should support. I would document the answers and any assumptions, then confirm them with the client. If uncertainty remained, I would create a simple draft or prototype and request feedback early. This approach keeps momentum while reducing rework and ensuring the final deliverable addresses the actual business need. Discuss asking targeted questions, identifying the intended output, documenting assumptions, confirming priorities, creating a preliminary version, and using iterative validation to avoid rework and misaligned expectations. Question 9. How do you ensure accuracy in your analysis? I use several checks rather than relying on one review. I validate the source and period, confirm definitions, remove duplicates, and reconcile totals to an independent reference where possible. In Excel, I inspect formulas, test unusual values, and perform reasonableness checks against prior periods or expectations. I maintain clear file naming and document assumptions. Before submitting, I review the output from the user's perspective and, where possible, ask a colleague to challenge the logic. While answering, focus on source validation, consistent definitions, reconciliations, formula checks, reasonableness testing, version control, peer review, and clearly documenting assumptions and exceptions. Question 10. What Excel functions or features are you comfortable using? I am comfortable using pivot tables, XLOOKUP, SUMIFs, if statements, filters, conditional formatting, and charts. I use pivot tables to summarize transaction data, lookups to connect supporting information, and SUMIFs to analyze performance by category or period. I also check for errors with validation rules and reconciliation totals. For example, in a project, I combined sales and cost data, identified the least profitable products, and presented the results in a concise dashboard. Be sure to mention practical capabilities such as pivot tables, XLOOKUP or index match, SUMIFs, if statements, data validation, filtering, charts, conditional formatting, and error checking with a business example. Question 11. How would you use Excel to analyze a company's declining sales? I would first validate the sales data and define whether the decline is measured by revenue, units, or both. Next, I would analyze trends by month, product, geography, channel, and customer segment. I would separate price effects from volume effects and compare current performance with budget and prior periods. Charts and pivot tables would highlight patterns, while stakeholder discussions would test possible causes. I would finish by prioritizing actions based on impact, feasibility, and supporting evidence. In your answer, cover data validation, time and segment analysis, volume versus price effects, customer or product trends, visualization, root cause testing, and converting findings into actionable recommendations. Question 12. What is the difference between a business requirement and a functional requirement? A business requirement describes what the organization wants to achieve, while a functional requirement explains what the solution must do to support that goal. For example, the business requirement might be to reduce invoice processing time by 20%. Functional requirements could include capturing invoice data automatically, routing exceptions to an approver, and producing status reports. Separating these levels prevents teams from confusing the desired outcome with a particular technical solution. Explain that business requirements describe the desired outcome or problem, while functional requirements specify system behavior, outputs, or actions, and include a clear example showing how the two connect. Question 13. How would you prioritize competing tasks from different stakeholders? I would compare tasks using business impact, urgency, dependencies, risk, and effort. A regulatory deliverable or task blocking several team members would usually rank above a low-impact enhancement. I would clarify deadlines and consequences with each stakeholder, then create a visible priority list. If conflicts remained, I would escalate with options and trade-offs rather than making an unsupported decision. I would also revisit priorities as new information or urgent client needs emerged. Make sure to cover urgency, business impact, dependencies, risk, effort, deadlines, stakeholder alignment, and communicating trade-offs instead of silently accepting every request. Question 14. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. In an academic analysis, I initially used an outdated exchange rate, which affected one section of the results. I noticed the inconsistency during a reasonableness review, checked the source, corrected the calculations, and informed my teammates immediately. I then added the source date to the input sheet and created a validation check for key assumptions. The mistake reinforced that accuracy requires both careful preparation and independent review, especially when external inputs can change. In your answer, choose a genuine but manageable example. Take responsibility, explain how you detected and corrected it, identify the root cause, and describe the control you added afterward. Question 15. How would you explain a complex analysis to a non-technical client? I would start with the business question and the conclusion, not the technical process. Then I would use a simple chart or example to show the main driver, explain the financial or operational impact, and outline the recommended action. I would avoid jargon and introduce technical detail only when it supports a decision. Finally, I would invite questions and confirm understanding. The goal is not to display analysis, but to make the insight usable. Focus on starting with the client's decision, avoiding unnecessary jargon, using a simple storyline and visuals, explaining business implications, checking understanding, and adjusting detail to the audience. Question 16. What would you do if your analysis contradicted a senior stakeholder's view? I would first recheck my data, formulas, definitions, and assumptions to ensure the contradiction was real. Then I would discuss it privately and respectfully, presenting the evidence rather than framing the issue personally. I would ask whether the stakeholder had context or information absent from my dataset. If the analysis remained valid, I would explain the implication and possible scenarios. I would also remain open to revising my conclusion if additional facts change the picture. Be sure to mention respect, evidence, assumption checks, private discussion, constructive challenge, alternative explanations, and willingness to revise your conclusion when facts support the stakeholder. Question 17. What is your understanding of Deloitte's professional values and ethics? My understanding is that Deloitte expects professionals to act with integrity, objectivity, respect, and accountability while protecting confidential information. In practice, that means presenting accurate results, disclosing conflicts, challenging unsupported assumptions, and never altering analysis to satisfy a preferred conclusion. If I identified an ethical or quality concern, I would document the facts and raise it through the appropriate manager or formal channel. Client trust and professional judgment must come before convenience or short-term pressure. Discuss integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, professional skepticism, respect, accountability, independence, and escalating concerns through appropriate channels when accuracy or client trust could be compromised. Question 18. How would you approach a basic profitability case interview? I would define profit as revenue minus costs and clarify whether the issue is recent, segment-specific, or company-wide. I would break revenue into price, volume, and mix, then separate fixed and variable costs. After requesting relevant data, I would calculate the largest changes and test likely causes, such as customer loss or input inflation. I would conclude with prioritized actions, expected impact, and risks, while stating assumptions clearly throughout the case. In your answer, structure revenue and costs, clarify the profit decline, segment the problem, use assumptions transparently, perform simple calculations, identify root causes, and recommend realistic actions. Question 19. How do you manage pressure and maintain work quality? I manage pressure by converting the workload into clear milestones and identifying the tasks that affect others or carry the greatest risk. I schedule review time instead of treating quality checks as optional, use checklists for recurring work, and communicate early if a dependency threatens the deadline. I also stay focused on facts rather than reacting emotionally. This approach helps me remain dependable during busy periods while still delivering accurate, well-organized work. Focus on planning, breaking work into milestones, prioritizing critical risks, communicating early, using checklists, protecting review time, and maintaining composure without sacrificing accuracy or professional behavior. Question 20. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? In 5 years, I aim to be a trusted analyst or consultant who can independently manage work streams, interpret data, and communicate recommendations to clients. I want to deepen my capabilities in Excel, visualization, process improvement, and the relevant Deloitte service area. I would also like to mentor newer colleagues and contribute to team development. My focus is on building expertise and earning greater responsibility through consistent performance, rather than pursuing a title without the supporting skills. Be realistic and role-aligned, emphasize developing technical and client skills, taking ownership, gaining relevant certifications if appropriate, mentoring others, and progressing through demonstrated performance rather than title alone. If you are still with us, congratulations. You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.